If ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsels or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen. While David is known for his conquests, it is actually Solomon who builds a kingdom and an empire that conforms to the standards of the ancient Near East. The Romans, with their Pax Romana, were said to have brought peace with a vengeance. How then do we look at the Bible's version of the Pax Israelitica, the empire of Solomon? Because the Bible is almost always read as a religious text, and in a religious environment, serious questions about the empire it depicts are never even raised. If Solomon ruled an empire, we should see it as a testament to his greatness and to divine favor upon him, right? If David's hands were full of blood establishing it, well, righteous kings get to do those sorts of things, don't they? After all, it's in the Bible. Let's backtrack a bit and reflect on the fact that after David passes from the scene, it's all about consolidating the kingdom Solomon inherits. Once his throne is secure, Solomon conveniently arranges marital alliances, and he does so on steroids. He marries the daughter of Egypt's Pharaoh, who, as the Israelite king's father-in-law, attacks and burns down the Canaanite city of Gezer, handing it over to Solomon as a gift. Solomon proceeds to go on a marrying frenzy, adding multiple wives and concubines to his makeshift harem. The grand number listed is 700 wives and 300 concubines. The Bible mentions one fellow, Adoniram, son of Abda, as the one in charge of forced labor. So this is the legacy of King Solomon the Wise? Multiple wives and forced labor? But fear not, the Bible states that Solomon didn't make slaves of the Israelites. It was conquered peoples, Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites who were subjected to servitude. So we give Solomon a pass. His reign starts out promisingly enough when the king requests from the divine will not wealth and power, but wisdom.
ואתה השם אלוהי, אתה המלכת את עבדך תחת דוד אבי, ואנוכי נער קטן, ולא אדע צא טובו, ועבדך בתוך עמך אשר בחרת, עם רב אשר לא יימנה ולא יספר מרוב, ונתת לעבדך לב שומע לשפוט את עמך, להבין בין טוב לרע, כי מי יוכל לשפוט את עמך הכבד הזה.
It becomes clear to all that his wish has been granted with the celebrated case of the two women arguing over the same infant child, each claiming to be the mother, when Solomon commands that the baby be cut in two and one half given to each woman. The real mother immediately relinquishes her claim, preferring her child to be raised by an impostor than be put to death. Solomon is extolled for his great wisdom and his inscrutable moral compass. Nonetheless, the biblical text also excoriates him for allowing his many wives, the women he had wed to cement his trading alliances, to lead him into idolatry in his later years. But Solomon, like David before him, is forgiven such dalliances as long as the majority are wealthy and prosperous and as long as there is peace in the land. Never mind that a part-time militia has been converted to a permanent standing army. Never mind that Solomon has done exactly what the prophet Samuel had warned that a king would do.
את בניכם ייקח, ושם לו במרכבתו ובפרשיו, ורצו לפני מרכבתו. צאנכם יעשור, ואתם תהיו לו לעבדים.
We are told that the king builds up a force of 12,000 horses, the cavalry divisions, and the source of considerable mythology about Solomon's stables, and 1,400 chariots, the tank corps. These he stations in the capital, Jerusalem, and in strategic chariot cities, Hatzor in the far north, Megiddo guarding the Jezreel Valley as it cuts a swath across Galilee, and Gezer further south between the Judean hills and the Mediterranean coast. Is there evidence that Solomon actually built these cities? Some have argued that Megiddo, in particular, was not Solomonic at all, and some deny that we have anything in the archaeological record that can be dated to Solomon. But the archaeology of Gezer, Megiddo, and Hatzor also reveals gates that resemble the exact description of those at Solomon's temple, suggesting that they may indeed have been built by Solomon. But Solomon isn't done. Even after creating a substantial army, he must have a navy to match. Far to the south, at Etzion Geber, today's Israeli city of Eilat on the Gulf of Aqaba, he builds a fleet of ships. Since Israelites are not exactly the seafaring sort, he relies on and one of his many alliances, King Hiram of Tyre, to supply an experienced crew of sailors. They sail as far as Ophir, of uncertain location, though perhaps on the African shore of the Red Sea, and bring back for Solomon's coffers some 16 tons of gold.
Well, me hearties, the text doesn't tell us exactly how they acquire such treasure, but we can guess that they basically abscond with it. We might call them Solomon's pirates.
In any case, Solomon's subsequent building binge is destined to lead him into the history books, and his nation into the poorhouse. Witness the king's great temple. Everyone remembers Solomon for his holy house, but there's always a downside. Temples, after all, invariably housed the statue of whichever deity was being honored. They were the physical house of a particular god or goddess, or even a whole slew of gods and goddesses. Solomon seems to get it when he exclaims, "But who is able to build a temple for him? Since the heavens, even the highest heavens, cannot contain him. Who then am I to build a temple for him, except as a place to burn sacrifices before him?" When it comes to ancient Israel, the nation seems to have survived before a temple existed. In fact, the true genius of the previous tabernacle, the one constructed under the auspices of Moses in the days of the 40-year post-Exodus wilderness sojourn, was that it was portable. While housed in a tent made of animal skins, there's certainly something to be said for such humble confines. It could travel among the 12 tribes, giving all the people access to the Ark of the Covenant and the sacrificial altar. All of that, however, must come to an end when the great sanctuary goes up on a hill to the north of David's city that will come to be called the Temple Mount. Solomon sends a message to King Hiram of Tyre to the north, spelling out his need for an alliance.
אתה ידעת את דוד אבי, כי לא יכול לבנות בית לשם השם אלוהיו, מפני המלחמה אשר סבבוהו, עד תת השם אותם תחת כפות רגליו. ועתה הניח השם אלוהי לי מסביב, אין שטן ואין פגע רע. והנני אומר, לבנות בית לשם השם אלוהי, כאשר דיבר השם אל דוד אבי לאמור, בנך אשר אתן תחתיך על כיסך, הוא יבנה הבית לשמי. ואתה צווה ויכרתו לי ארזים מן הלבנון, ועבדי יהיו עם עבדיך, ושכר עבדיך אתן לך ככל אשר תאמר. כי אתה ידעת כי אין בנו איש יודע לכרות עצים כצידונים.
When it comes to the influence of the Tyrians on King Solomon and his realm, there is destined to be no stopping point. The minute architectural details of the new temple make the structures seem to be a copy of the temple of Melkart of Tyre. As in Phoenician shrines, Solomon's temple is to have a central courtyard, a hechal, an outer chamber, an ulam, and an inner sanctum, or holy of holies, debir in Hebrew. Beyond the front entrance, there is an annex housing rooms for the temple staff. There's also the great bronze laver, a veritable sea of bronze, as the Bible calls it, adorning the courtyard in front of the temple proper, symbolically declaring that Israel's God reigns, not just over the land, but the sea as well. It holds some 10,000 gallons of water, used by the priests to attain ritual purity before officiating in the sacrificial offerings. It weighs in at a staggering 200 tons. As for the interior of the edifice, it is covered with fine cedar wood panels from, of course, Lebanon. No expense is spared as the king adorns the temple furnishings, the altar of incense, the table of bread offered to God, and the 10 lampstands before the Holy of Holies with pure gold. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus describes the Tyrian shrine as having 2 great pillars of gold and of precious stones in a manner reminiscent of the 2 pillars of the entrance of Solomon's temple. They are, in essence, phallic symbols, being regarded by the Phoenicians as emblematic of fertility. It is, in fact, a reasonable assumption that the Phoenician craftsmen hired by the Israelite king used the Tyrian temple as a prototype for the one they will construct in Jerusalem. So, is Solomon's temple a copy of a pagan shrine? That's what foreign entanglements get you. They also get you indebted by degrees to your allies. In Near Eastern tradition, a king had to have a palace in order for his rule to be considered legitimate. Solomon, in his own vanity, will prove to be no exception. It takes him 13 years, which at least proves that he's patient. Located on the Temple Mount to the south of the shrine itself, it's one more testimony to the influence of King Hiram of Tyre. Solomon may have built a monarch's dream, but he still hasn't paid the bill for all of his wealth and his grandiose building projects. The reality is that his most desired materials, gold, silver, and cedar, are commodities lacking in Israel. He's forced to look to other lands for his commodities, for which he must pay increasingly exorbitant prices. He therefore resorts to the one tool that members of the ruling class can always count on: taxation.
Sandwiched
Among all the lavish praise heaped upon Solomon for his construction of the temple and his palace is a brief verse that speaks volumes. King Solomon gave 20 towns in Galilee to Hiram, king of Tyre, because Hiram had supplied him with all the cedar and pine and gold he wanted. 1 Kings 9:11. The Bible makes this sound like a gift. But let us suggest something else lurking beneath the surface. The Bible may well be covering for the fact that Solomon's debt burden has become so heavy that he must resort to ceding his own territory, his sovereign land, to a foreign monarch. All of Solomon's fortifications won't help him or his kingdom in the end. One of Solomon's own officials, Jeroboam by name, has an encounter with a prophet that will shape the course of future events. One day, as Jeroboam was leaving Jerusalem, the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh met him along the way. Ahijah was wearing a new cloak. The two of them were alone in a field, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. Then he said to Jeroboam,
קח לך 10 קרעים, כי כה אמר השם אלוהי ישראל, הנני קורע את הממלכה מיד שלמה, ונתתי לך את 10 השבטים.
We are told that Solomon, fearful for his rule, tries to kill Jeroboam, who flees for safety to Egypt. Exile, as we know on multiple occasions in history, is the incubator of civil war, the crucible of revolution. At Solomon's passing, his son Rehoboam will take the throne in Judah, while 10 of the 12 tribes situated to the north will break away. So it will be in ancient Israel, in Solomon's mighty wake.